just listened to a really good talk from Gary Vaynerchuk. He describes himself as an entrepreneur and a content marketing animal. Gary, really nice that you're here to talk with me today. My first question is, I mean, I should be more the digital native than you are, but it really seems that you have...
Are you saying I'm old?
Older than I am. I'm really sorry, I have to admit that.
Yeah, go ahead.
But I think you have more the grab of all the social media hypes that are going on, more than I do. I have the feeling I'm always the last one on a platform and then it's already uncool again.
Yep.
So tell me, what's the next big thing and what should I drop?
So, you know, obviously I have a much stronger grasp of the US market than the German market, but I can tell you that Snapchat is just completely on fire in the US. Anybody 15 to 25, I would say, is completely enthralled. I think it's Instagram and Snapchat are number 1 and 2. And then after that, you know, Facebook, Twitter, Pinterest kind of fall into that next tier. The most emerging platform in the US is something called Yik Yak, which has become very big on college campuses. It's anonymous, but I think anonymous doesn't last as long, so we'll have to see how that plays out. But I would say the number one thing that you need to play with is Snapchat, and to drop, probably, you know, if you ever went on there in the first place, probably Google Plus is probably worth dropping.
Okay, I'm not on Google Plus. Yes, one good thing. But I mean, if you discover a new social media hype, are you always really like into it in the first second? Because when I installed Snapchat, I thought, really, that's it? That's weird. Like I couldn't think of what to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I never jump into anything unless I see very early traction. So usually I'm in the first 10 to 100,000 users, which is very early. But it's not zero. I don't see something that shows up on day one and I start using it. I need to see behavior. I need to see how other people use it. To me, Snapchat made a lot of sense because it came out 2.5 years ago, 3 years ago, when everything was public and it was so private. And I'm a big fan of believing things go back and forth. As a matter of fact, right now with WhatsApp and the texting and the Snapchat, things are going more private. So for me already, I'm saying, 2020, 2021, 2022, there'll be a new Twitter type thing that's very open. And so for me, it's pendulums. They swing in different directions. I think Snapchat had the right timing of something being private in a world where everything was public.
So, I mean, but are there any platforms that are going to stay? Like, do they have a chance to survive all these hypes?
I think Facebook is clearly the one that has the best chance, mainly because I believe in their CEO. I think Zucks is very strong. I think he evolves the product. I think things have a way to stay. I think of social networks like restaurants. Here's what I mean by that. I think you can stay because people make them their place. So I think specifically in the US, if someone's over 35 and older, I think Facebook is where they live. And they don't want all these new things. But the young kids always look for the new club, the new restaurant, right? So the 13, 14, 15-year-old in America right now, they're gonna look for their Snapchat, their Instagram, their Facebook, their Twitter. And so you'll always have new things coming up. And then depending on how good the operator is, she or he will make it last longer. MySpace didn't have a great operator. They sold to a big company, it died. Facebook ended up having a great operator. I think it stays.
So, but the brands, they want the cool young kids, they don't want the older ones, so they need to interact with all these new platforms and the new ways of communication. How can they do that? Apparently they're not really good at it.
Yeah, so I mean, look, first of all, I think brands need to look at both. A lot of time the young kids aren't spending as much money as the 20, 30, 40-year-olds. So I think they need both. The best way to play is to act like it. The problem is BMW or Nike or Pepsi aren't a 15-year-old kid. So they need to find either people internally or external agents or agencies or individuals who can help them translate it. It's really slang, right? It's like cool words. You know, 15-year-olds use different words than 25-year-olds. If a 25-year-old wants to hang out with a 15-year-old, they need to know how to use those words, but more importantly, they need to know how to use those words and not feel out of place, right? And I think that's self-awareness I think brands need, and really respecting the audience.
I mean, it's difficult for the brands. I mean, if they really want to act
super
cool.
Hard.
And I mean,
it feels, right?
Yeah.
Like, you don't want to hang out with a 39-year-old who acts 22. Like, it doesn't feel right. So, you know, the 39-year-old has to know where they can go and where they need to stop. And I think a lot of brands don't know where to stop. For me, I know where I can go, but there's always a place where I have to stop, or I lose relevance because I'm trying too hard. Most brands try too hard. They need to go right up to the cusp to be relevant, right? But not over.
But I mean, lots of big brands, they're also really, really scared. They really, really don't want to lose what they build up, so they don't want to interact. What do you think is a bigger problem?
That's a great question. I think it's a mix, and I think that the number one thing brands need to realize is you've got to always be on the offense. Because if you stay and try to keep what you want, eventually the time runs out and they're not able to really be relevant anymore. And a lot of brands have died by not trying to be relevant.
So, but one thing you always say is that content matters. The brands have to have content, but what's good content? Do you have examples for that?
Well, I think good content's different, right? You're gonna think something as a 20-something-year-old female that's different than what I think, that awesome, look at that awesome dude behind the camera. What he loves, what he loves and how he rolls is gonna be different, and we all have different interpretation of good content. So the key is to make the content specific to who you're talking to. And I think that's what the digital age has created. TV was one blunt object. You had to put it out to everything. You might have thought it was cool, I didn't, so they had fragmentation. What's amazing about digital is what I put out on Snapchat can be different than what I put out on Facebook. And I'm speaking to the audience is different, and they can still be Pepsi. They just have to be different.
But if people share that, then I might as well think, okay, what is this brand? I can't really say what it is because what they say to me is different than they say to my mom.
Huge misnomer. The way you act with me right now in this interview is very different than the way you act with your mom, is very different than the way you're gonna act with your girlfriends when you go out for the night at 2 o'clock in the morning.
I guess.
So people are different. Why are we asking brands to be one thing? That's stupid marketing brand talk. Brands can be different in different scenarios.
So and the consumer wants that?
The consumers, look, let's take a step back. If your product sucks, you're dead regardless. You can be the best marketer of all time and do everything right on Snapchat and Facebook and you lose. I do think the consumer wants to be spoken to in the way they want to consume. So absolutely, I believe that. As a matter of fact, it's probably the biggest thing I'm fighting in the US marketing world. Everybody has this dream of the brand representing one thing. I think schizophrenia and acting differently is a good thing for brands.
So personalized brands are going to be the next big thing, or are the way to go?
It's the way it's always been. For, Nike at its height was personalized to all those people. And who it wasn't, it didn't sell to. So if you're able to scale personalization, you win.
Great, thank you very much, Gary. I have one last question.
Yes.
You said you remember the time when there was no internet.
Yes.
Do you miss anything of that time?
No.
Not at all?
No. I am not romantic about that because I'm a big boy. If I want to go play soccer outside, the internet's not stopping me, right? So I'm absolutely not romantic about how it used to be. I love all the new options. I love the fact that in the last 5 minutes, I took my phone out and spoke to people that are here that liked my talk. That I couldn't do 20 years ago. And if I want to go fishing, then I can go fishing. People use the internet as an excuse for their own behavior.
Thank you very much, Gary. And Gary also said that we're all going to be robots and we shouldn't be scared of it. So I'm really looking forward to that.
In like 100 years, not tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
really
you.
nice talking to you.
You did a great job.